Good afternoon. I am John Kuhn, the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Kentucky. I want to thank all of those who have joined us today. Louisville Mayor Greg Fisher, the Dean of the University of Louisville School of Medicine, Dr. Tony Ganzel, LMPD Chief Steve Conrad, DEA Special Agent in Charge Timothy Planson, and CADCA Representative Carleton Hall. President Obama has proclaimed this week as Prescription Opioid and Heroin Epidemic Awareness Week. Quite a mouthful. Because Kentucky is one of the epicenters of the opioid and heroin crisis, the Attorney General of the United States, Loretta Lynch, visited Kentucky yesterday to highlight the problem and to promote solutions. She emphasized that the path out of this epidemic will involve intensive efforts in the areas of law enforcement, prevention, and treatment. As all of you know, Louisville has been particularly hard hit by heroin. Despite the fact that addiction is a treatable brain disease, the ravages of addiction are tearing apart the lives of individuals and families in our city. The end for most addicts, tragically, is either death or prison. In the first 6 months of 2016, 183 people have died from drug overdoses in Louisville. 90% of those, 162 persons, died from an overdose caused by heroin or one of the many morphine analogs such as fentanyl or a mixture of heroin and fentanyl. The responsibility, the moral responsibility to do more falls upon all of our shoulders, but especially the public safety and public health officials and leaders who are here today. We have asked you here today to announce 3 new initiatives that we expect to make a real difference. First, we are announcing that Louisville has been named the 4th city in the nation to participate in DEA's 360 Strategy Initiative. This is a program that specifically targets heroin and opioids. Second, we're announcing a new overdose investigation and prosecution initiative built upon a collaboration between LMPD, DEA, and the U.S. Attorney's Office. And finally, as part of the 360 strategy, we are announcing a heroin and opioid response summit to bring together Louisville's thought leaders and stakeholders in this area. We will begin with the announcement of the DEA 360 Strategy Initiative. Here to tell us about that is Timothy Planson, the special agent in charge of the DEA Detroit Field Office, who oversees a region that includes Kentucky. Tim?
Thank you and good afternoon. Thank you for coming to the DEA 360 Strategy Community Press Conference. My name is Tim Planson, and I'm the Special Agent in charge of the Drug Enforcement Administration, Detroit Field Division, which covers the states of Michigan, Ohio, and the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We all know that there's a severe prescription drug, heroin, and fentanyl abuse epidemic that confronts the city of Louisville in addition to many other parts of the United States. The problem is so great that overdose deaths occur in far higher numbers than traffic fatalities or gun violence nationwide. There are more drug overdose deaths in Jefferson County, speaking more locally, than any other county in Kentucky. That doesn't even account for the estimated hundreds, well over 1,000, of about 1,400 as of September, of emergency responses to overdose in Jefferson County that do not result in death, thanks to the life-saving work of our emergency responders. The prescription drug, heroin, and fentanyl problem is real, and the problem requires the best of community efforts in response. Our partners standing with me today have committed to deploying the DEA 360 strategy in Louisville, Kentucky. This strategy leverages and expands existing federal, state, and local partnerships to address the problem on several different fronts: law enforcement, prescription drug control, drug education and prevention, along with substance abuse treatment. The first component of our strategy is built around our law enforcement initiatives, which target drug trafficking organizations and work to significantly diminish the flow of heroin, fentanyl, and prescription drugs into our communities. To execute the enforcement component of the strategy, the DEA will rely and expand upon all of its resources and continue our partnerships with our outstanding law enforcement allies, many of which are standing alongside me today, such as the Kentucky State Police, Louisville Metro Police Department, and the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. As you will hear momentarily from our law enforcement partners, the DEA is committed to addressing this epidemic that comes at such great cost to so many lives in Jefferson County. While law enforcement plays a central role in the strategy, enforcement actions alone are not enough to make lasting changes in our communities. The second component of the strategy will be to engage with healthcare providers and government health organizations to facilitate discussions and develop solutions about preventing prescription drug abuse, which continues to fuel the current heroin and opioid epidemic. We know from national studies that 80% of all new heroin users started their addictions with prescription painkillers. And recent national statistics show over 47,000 people die yearly, almost 129 a day, as a result of drug overdoses, and those numbers are tragically growing. The primary focus of the DEA 360 is on preventing pharmaceutical drug diversion by providing education and training within the medical and pharmaceutical community. The third component of the strategy seeks to enable our communities to achieve long-term solutions to their drug abuse issues by expanding and leveraging our partnerships both nationally and locally in drug education, drug prevention, and drug treatment. These efforts will involve drug education through broad-based information outlets such as public service announcements, websites, and commercials, as well as more personal avenues for education as in classrooms and after-school programs. We recognize that while law enforcement plays an important role in combating the issue before us, drug education and prevention efforts are vitally important because they give our children the tools and knowledge to grow up drug-free. With us today are some of these partners, such as the Benevolent and Protective Order of Elks and the Boys and Girls Clubs of Kentuckiana. We also know that for those people battling drug addiction, it is a problem that cannot be faced in isolation and requires the best in drug treatment. Our goal, through the collaborative efforts of many different sectors of this community that will be involved with the DEA 360 strategy, is to identify and get help to those in need of help. The global objective of our DEA 360 strategy is to bring together all of these equally important components together to create new synergies, new partnerships, so we can turn the tide on prescription drug, heroin, and fentanyl, on the prescription drug, heroin, and fentanyl epidemic and the violence it brings to the great city of Louisville. I kind of almost made it through without stumbling. With that, I will turn it over to Mr. Kuhn.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Next, we'd like to tell you about our new overdose investigation and prosecution initiative. This is a new law enforcement program developed to narrowly target our heroin problem here in Louisville. It's a partnership between LMPD, DEA, and my office. LMPD will be dedicating narcotics detectives to work with DEA to pursue evidence that's available at overdose scenes. The goal of these investigations will be to identify the drug dealer who sold the deadly heroin or heroin mixture. Our goal, ultimately, is to prosecute these dealers in federal court, where they will face sentences of 20 years to life, a minimum of 20 years, with mandatory lifetime sentences for those with prior drug felonies. Our targets are not addicts, nor those who share drugs with other addicts, but the dealers who are willing to destroy lives for the sake of profit. Today, we have a message for those heroin dealers. You are killing people in this city, and we cannot allow this to continue. From this point forward, if you sell heroin that causes an overdose in this city, we will bring federal charges against you that will get you a 20-year minimum sentence in prison with no parole. and life in prison if you have a prior drug felony. It doesn't matter if the overdose victim dies or recovers from the overdose. We're still coming after you, and you still face these penalties. This has got to stop. And whatever amount of money you're making from this, it can't be worth 20 years in prison. The trafficking in this deadly poison must end. And next, I want to hear from one of our most valuable partners here, without whom we couldn't have an initiative like that, and that is our mayor, Mayor Greg Fisher. He has been a leader in our effort to turn back the tide of overdoses, and a valued partner in our fight against heroin. In fact, Mayor Fisher, years before heroin stories were front-page news, recognized the problem of overdoses in our cities and began to do something about it in a way that involved multiple disciplines and many dimensions, and started programs like One Love Louisville to do something about that. So I ask our really a visionary leader in this area, Mayor Fisher, to speak to us about this.
Thank you, John, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming out here today for this important announcement. And on behalf of our 760,000 citizens here in Louisville, I want to thank John Kuhn and everybody at the U.S. Attorney's Office, as well as Tim Plausten and the folks at DEA as well. This is a partnership that's tremendously beneficial for our LMPD officers and for our citizens, for our efforts to fight heroin, which really has been documented so many times, so painfully, has become a curse not just for our citizens, but for people around the country as well. I want to talk a little bit about what the city is doing outside of the criminal aspects of this relative to treatment and diversion. We don't meet anybody that wants to be an addict, and they oftentimes cry to get out of a life of addiction, and so the city wants to make sure that we're there to give people that shot if they want it. We start with our LMPD officers by training them to administer Narcan, also known as naloxone, so they can treat people who are overdosing when they're on the scene. The numbers are startling in terms of numbers of times that this drug has been administered. Since we started equipping LMPD with naloxone in December, they've administered this life-saving drug to over 400 people. LMPD is not the only agency equipped to administer naloxone. A number of other metro agencies are equipped with Narcan, and we're seeing dramatically increased usage across the board. EMS, for example, since last year has seen an increase in Narcan administrations of 166%. That need is why we supported the expansion of the Healing Place in this year's budget that took effect July 1st, so more citizens can get help to get out of a life of addiction. We've also seen that addiction is driving up our arrest numbers, and many of our frequent arrestees have a mental health illness and drug and/or alcohol dependency. So naturally, that's contributing to problems in our jail. Our Metro Corrections program is ahead of the curve with this nationally and is using programs like Enough is Enough and the Second Chance program that we announced yesterday to try and help more people stay off drugs and out of jail. Our Department of Public Health and Wellness for the City of Louisville established Kentucky's first syringe exchange program last year, and it continues to exceed our expectations. The exchange provides free syringes, HIV testing, and prevention supplies, as well as education regarding hepatitis C transmission, sexually transmitted diseases, wound care, and proper syringe disposal. It's serving now more than 4,000 participants and has referred more than 250 people to drug treatment. Last month, additionally, the City of Louisville established the Office of Addiction Services within the Department of Public Health and Wellness. Addiction is a disease that everybody wishes was not out there. But as I speak to many different groups around the city, I ask everybody, has anybody here not been affected by addiction, whether it be alcohol addiction or drug addiction? Nobody raises their hand. So this announcement's important today, but it's also important in our community that we lean into issues like this and have public discussions, because we want to send the message to folks that are in the throes of addiction that there is help in the community. We're not going to hide from this problem. And this is what our Office of Addiction Services is all about. That office is building partnerships among both the public and private sectors to address prevention, education, and the treatment of addiction. This includes finding ways to provide higher quality care for drug rehabilitation and greater access to treatment. It's creating a one-stop website where anyone looking for services can get information about treatment options. And the Office for Addiction Services coordinates with police, ERs, and other frontline providers, because we know that to best serve our citizens, naturally, all partners have to collaborate and communicate about this problem. And that obviously is the same attitude our partners and allies in the U.S. Attorney's Office and the DEA have embraced. Law enforcement and sending the crystal clear accountability message to the criminals who prey on addicts by selling heroin is a critical part of making our city safe and healthy. Our partnership with the U.S. Attorney and the DEA offers us some powerful new tools and possibilities for the fight against heroin. And that's a huge win for our citizens, for LMPD officers, and our city at large. So, John, thank you for allowing us to participate in this partnership.
Next, we'll hear from Chief Steve Conrad.
Just real brief, and I don't have any prepared statement, but I just want to share my thanks with Mr. Kuhn from the United States Attorney's Office and from the DEA and all the work that has been happening with the mayor and the Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods and the Public Health Department. We're coming at this from a lot of directions, and we've been so focused in on the enforcement, at least at the police department. It is wonderful to hear about the comprehensive approach that we'll be able to be taking through the DEA's 360 program. We're very excited that people are going to have the opportunity to get the treatment that they need. We're already working on that here locally. There's so many great partners that are trying to make that happen, but additional support is huge. Public education is an area where we've just truly been trying, but this is just a much needed shot in the arm, no pun intended, to get more resources here in our community. And I cannot be any more excited about the opportunity to work with DEA and the United States Attorney's Office on this heroin investigative team concept. You know, we have seen many more people die from overdoses than we have from any other violent crime. And it is time that we have an opportunity to start holding people truly accountable for the things that they are doing to people in our community. This is giving us an incredible tool, an incredible opportunity, and we are not going to squander it. We've dedicated more resources to our narcotics unit. The numbers that we heard today in terms of the number of deaths, the number of overdoses, underscore the importance of making sure that we are handling the enforcement end of it, but knowing that we have this great support from the prevention and treatment side just tells me that we have an opportunity to see the tide shift in our community. And I'm just very, very excited about the people that are here with us today. This is a great partnership, and I think it's a turning point for our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Finally, we want to talk to you about our upcoming Heroin and Opioid Response Summit. We plan to hold a summit on December 1st, 2016, that will be very focused on Louisville's particular problems and potential solutions that might work here in Louisville. We will have discussions that will be focused in the area of prevention, in the areas of treatment, and in the areas of prevention and education. We hope that this cross-pollinates, that each of these disciplines and groups learn from one another. As everyone here knows, our heroin addicts currently addicted need treatment, and they need better access to treatment. We cannot solve the heroin crisis until we can help addicts find their way into recovery. And in the prevention area, we need deep and broad public awareness of the dangers not only of heroin, but also of prescription opioids. As we heard from Special Agent Planson, 80%, 4 out of 5 heroin addicts started with prescription painkillers. For that reason, and because prescription opioids are the most common path to heroin addiction and use, the medical community needs to continue its efforts toward preventing new cases of addiction. Recognizing that, the University of Louisville School of Medicine has joined us in hosting this upcoming summit, which will be held at the University of Louisville School of Medicine, again on December 1st, 2016. The summit will bring together all disciplines that are involved in the heroin crisis. Those from medicine and treatment, prevention and education, first responders, and law enforcement. We will invite to attend all organizations and disciplines whose work is impacted by heroin and opioid epidemic. I now invite Dr. Tony Genzel, the Dean of the School of Medicine, to say a few words about this problem, which is as much a public health crisis as it is a law enforcement problem. Dr. Genzel.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhn, and thank you for the honor of participating in this partnership. We'd also like to welcome you to our campus and to tell you how delighted we are to host the summit. We're really proud as the University of Louisville School of Medicine to be not just located in the city of Louisville, but to really be a part of the city of Louisville and to be of our Commonwealth. So partnerships like this are incredibly important to us. Our mission is to improve the health of our patients and our communities. And we can't carry out that mission unless we tackle really tough issues like this. For many years, opioids were considered the mainstay of treatment for chronic pain without really good evidence that they were effective over the long haul of the months and years that patients struggle with chronic pain. Physicians were encouraged to keep patients comfortable in treating their pain, which is still our goal. But for individuals suffering from chronic pain, opioids are no longer considered the best option. So physicians must understand how to keep patients comfortable while setting realistic goals with them and developing an effective treatment plan. The University of Louisville School of Medicine is instructing our students how to best do this. We incorporate guidelines from the CDC on opioid prescribing into our curriculum and teach principles that will keep them as physicians, help them to limit opioid overuse and to lessen the risk of harm from opioid treatment. We're training standardized patients in symptoms of chronic pain to help students understand how to best work with these patients. We're instructing students in specific opioid total daily dosing prescribing that has been associated with harm and risk of death if exceeded. We're advising students on other forms of treatment for chronic pain, including physical therapy and exercise, acupuncture, massage, and other anti-inflammatory medications. We're instructing students in the use of naloxone and other medications used in the treatment of opioid addiction and of the importance of taking a multi-pronged and more holistic approach to the complexities of opioid addiction. We look forward to partnerships like this, to partnering with our schools, to partnering with our community organizations towards together looking at creatively solving some of these very, very difficult and complex issues. We're confident that partnerships like this are going to help our community be healthier and that specific education steps that we're taking will help physicians better treat chronic pain in a more patient-centered fashion and better and more effectively treat patients with addiction. We're proud to be part of this partnership, and we look forward to participating. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Carleton Hall, who comes to us from Washington, D.C. He is with CADCA, or the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America, and they are essential partners in the DEA 360 strategy program. Carleton?
Well, good afternoon. It's an incredible honor to be here, to be participating in this, and to have been invited by the U.S. Attorney and the DEA leadership to just offer a couple of comments regarding our role and our support for this very important initiative. I want to first start off by just sharing and saying that you've heard the numbers and you've heard about the extent of this problem and challenge, and you've heard it referred to as an epidemic. But I want to offer this. What does an epidemic look like? What does it feel like? There are some who will suggest that those that are within the sound of my voice, if you can hear me speaking, you or someone you know very closely has been impacted directly by this. If not yourself, a family member, a neighbor, a church member, a colleague at work. That, by definition, is what an epidemic feels like. You have your story, I have mine. My brother, in fact, this past weekend, it represents the 10-year anniversary, if you will, of his passing. My brother passed because of complications associated with a disease called sickle cell anemia, which affects many in the African American community. But it also means that he endured excruciating chronic pain throughout his life, and therefore built up a physical dependency. He wasn't addicted, but a physical dependency on very powerful opiates. Now, it didn't affect him only, but because my brother Khalil was a little larger than life, even though he was only 98 pounds, he got to be known within our family and within our circle of friends as the local pharmacy. Members of our family, without knowing better, if they had a pain, they would just simply go to Khalil. You wouldn't have to go to a doctor for a prescription. You wouldn't have to go to a pharmacy. You go to Khalil. And the most critical note to make about this is that no one thought that they were doing anything wrong or dangerous. Last year, more than 1,200 people died of an overdose here in this great state. And I would suggest to you that most, if not all, probably would not recognize that they were doing something as dangerous as that. So why are we here? Why am I here? I'm pleased to be here to represent the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America, which represents more than 5,000 anti-drug coalitions throughout our nation, many of whom are addressing this issue head on and coming up with strategies that we are all learning from each other. And we are very, very honored to have been invited by the U.S. Attorney and by the DEA leadership to put our shoulder to the wheel as well in this very important initiative to bring our expertise and resources to bear, along with yours, to help with this issue. Because while this issue is not unique to Louisville, the way it manifests itself is uniquely specific to this community and therefore requires a very local response to it. And so we're here to help in that regard. And so even though we know the numbers, and the numbers may make it seem as though this is insurmountable, even impossible, I'm reminded of the fact that we're in Louisville. And I'm reminded of a great native Louisvillian, some would call him the greatest even, who made a remark that I suggest has some appropriateness here. He reminded us that impossible is nothing but a big word that is often thrown around by small people who would rather live in the world that they've been given than explore the possibility of the power they have to change it. Impossibility or impossible is not a fact, it is an opinion. It is not a declaration, it is a dare. I'm here to stand up here and say thank you to the U.S. Attorney, to the Mayor, Chief, and to the DEA leadership for daring to have the visionary leadership to bring us all together on this very important cause. There is work to do, and we are here to help. Thank you all very, very much for your time.
Before I open up for questions, I want to thank a couple of our other partners who are leaning in with us to make a difference. We have with us here the Commissioner of State Police, Rick Sanders, who's an incredibly vital partner with us, with DEA, with LMPD, as is our Appalachia HIDA folks who are based in Kentucky but help provide us resources and are in fact contributing some resources to help us with our new overdose prosecution initiative. And thanks finally to the Sheriff's Office who provides task force officers that help us work on this problem as well. Now, if any of you have questions, we're happy to take those.
Could you start by specifically addressing the issue here in Metro Louisville, the deaths with heroin regarding
well, in terms of our law enforcement response, we've had ongoing, very robust investigations of drug trafficking organizations here in Louisville. But our new initiative will enable us to exploit evidence that's present at overdose scenes. As I explained, our goal will be to get to the traffickers, not to the addicts who are suffering from their addiction, but to use whatever evidence is available there to get to the higher level dealers.
You had some pretty stern words for the dealers. Would you go over that again?
Yeah, the harm they cause, the harm that dealers are causing is incalculable. If you speak with overdose victims, with addicts, with the families of addicts, with the parents who have lost children to heroin overdoses, you realize what incredible human cost there is to this problem. In part because of that, we've got to do more. It's imperative we do everything in our power to stop this. As a person who has law enforcement powers, we'll bring everything we have to stop this. That means imposing some very harsh sentences against those who are dealing and trafficking in this poison. I hope they stop today. That's my main objective, is that this announcement will be a deterrent. But for those who continue to deal in this, the fact of the matter is they're going to cause overdoses. They sell heroin. They don't know what's in it. It may contain fentanyl. It may contain carfentanil. There's no way to measure for them to measure the potency of what they're selling, and they are causing overdoses. They are causing people to die. So that's why we're bringing this rather harsh approach. We have no choice, but they do. The dealers have a choice, and they can stop right now.
Anybody else? Okay,
I wonder if you see an end in sight. Do you feel like it's a problem you could tackle in 2 years, 4 years, or do you think it's going to be decades long.
It's going to be a long-term problem. We have to deal with this not only from a law enforcement standpoint, where we're doing something about the supply of heroin. We need to get help for those that are currently addicted. We need better and more treatment. And then we need to do more work in preventing new addictions, which will involve public education. And with DEA 360, we hope to do a lot more of that. And will involve the medical community to get much better informed. And what Dr. Ganzel was talking about will be instrumental in doing that. This is something that's going to take a great deal of time. It's not going to be a year or two. And it's going to involve many, many disciplines.